Awesome. Cool, man. Well, Sterling, it's great to have you on here. How's everything
Going
going?
great, man. It's it's been a busy couple of weeks. We've been heads down on a lot of different stuff, but starting to peek our head out a little bit, and we're really excited.
Nice. And did you end up moving to SF? Or
Yeah, I'm in SF right now.
Okay, nice. How's
It's
that?
been great, man. It's funny, like a lot of people say I've only been here a couple times, so it's like I haven't been here a ton, so I don't really have a lot to like compare it to. And like I know that there's like a lot of people who complain about like certain things, and there's been a lot of noise around it, but I've actually been having a blast. It is partially just like the honeymoon thing of like being in a new place, but also the first time I've lived by myself or had like any of my own furniture or anything. So like that part is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've always like I've known how transient I am and like how much I move around. So I've always like not really gotten stuff, but now I'm like getting to pick things out and like be by myself. It's been pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah. No, and I think as someone who used to live in SF, I definitely like have certain critiques, but I feel like that's any place,
exactly.
like and I feel like in your 20s, like you should be exploring, living in different places, checking it out. So yeah, I mean that. And yeah, I mean, you live in New York, you have your New York network. I mean, and then, Silicon Valley, SF, obviously a ton of people.
The joke I keep saying is that I'm trying to hit like every major city because I grew up in Vegas, moved to LA, lived there for 7 years, then did New York for 3, now doing SF, probably hit Miami next. Every place with Chicago is what I keep saying. There, but everywhere else.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome, man. Well, Sterling, I know we we met through Grishin, and I think you also knew Kevin Fong. And yeah, it's been awesome to hear tangentially and a little bit from you what you've been working on. I know there's been a lot of changes for you recently. But yeah, I guess to start off, once again, thanks for being on here. It'd be great to hear kind of like your story a little bit, like high level, how you starting from college or wherever you want to start. Leading to where you are now, in terms of like your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'll start in college. So I was a touring musician in college. I went to USC, toured with a bunch of hip hop and electronic acts, Dylan Francis, Disclosure, T-Pain, Lil Jon, just to name a few. Did that for a while. It was super fun. I mean, I started as like a basement DJ. And then just ended up meeting Dylan Francis at a show that I was performing in, and he kind of put me on. But it's just funny. I went from there to WME because I wanted to like leverage like my business degree, and like that's what everyone had always talked about. Like you have to use the degrees you get in school. So went to WME, did music touring for a couple of years, ended up working for like the head of the music department, and in 6 months, ended up working for him for about a year and a half. I had ended up wanting to go to the finance and accounting department because I got so tired of the music business and like not being a creative in it. But I asked him if I could move to the finance and accounting department. We had just like bought the UFC, so like we were being very acquisitive. We were pouring money into that department, and it felt like a great opportunity for me to kind of get out from underneath like just music industry. And he said no, and I was like, damn, like I don't want to do this anymore, but I can't quit. So I started my own company doing a stock trade alert service. I noticed that like of my friends that had just gotten paychecks for the first time, everyone was like a new employee. None of them knew how to invest it. None of them were investing it, and so I built a service that basically texted them every time I made a trade. Ended up doing about 1,000 customers. The cost of the business were like $46. I built it myself, hacked it together in reality. But we did like 200% performance in 2017, which I thought was pretty good. Got 1,000 users, got on the front page of Wall Street Bets, like all this stuff. And ended up going back to the company and being like, hey, almost all the agents in this department are signed up for my service. I have things are really going really well. Like, can I go to the finance and accounting department? I promise that I'll be an asset there. And they finally said yes. So I moved over using my entrepreneurial spirit to do that. And then moved over to finance and accounting. The first deal that I worked on was CryptoKitties, Dapper Labs, when I moved over there, which was pretty cool. Incredible business back then. It's an incredible business now, but I got really into crypto and collectibles. My company and like my user base of my stock trade alert service didn't really like crypto back that much, but that's kind of what I wanted to go do. Always knew that I was going to be sitting at like the intersection of like media and investing. And then after business school, I went to Columbia Business School, graduated in May of last year, did some VC investing, kind of deciding where I wanted to jump in next as an entrepreneur, and decided that NFTs ultimately capture that nexus. Like they sit exactly in that spot between like financial instruments and investing and like building as well as like entertainment. So decided to go do that. Minotaur originally started as like a side project. Like it was while I was at Grishin, where we met, doing VC investing, I noticed that I more and more just wanted to spend my time on like Web3. And after a while, I was like, I need to do some projects. I need to build in the space. And I did a couple of projects and then realized like, oh wait, I have like 7 projects in the pipeline here. I should just get a team and build a company. Originally started as an agency. It flourishes as an agency, but I think that the long-term potential with that company is extremely scalable. So currently building out the scalable side of the business while we kind of maintain and manage our projects on an agency basis. But decided to start Minotaur after just kind of pinpointing the exact spot where I wanted to re-enter as an entrepreneur. And so far, so great.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely was excited to chat with you and learn more. I mean, I feel like you have a very interesting background. And yeah, like perfectly suited for, like you said, media and finance, and that's like NFTs and more in Web3.
Exactly.
Definitely a lot to talk about. I guess like first off, you were at USC and like, in that world, and I've heard like a lot of horror stories, and I kind of deal with creators now a little bit. What was it like interacting with different musicians, artists, and like what was the music industry even like?
It's crazy. Like it's definitely like the weirdest and like most like cool but like misunderstood industry I think in the world, all of them. Like these type of stuff that we were put through, like when I went to business school and was like explaining it, I felt like I was like getting out of an abusive relationship because all the things that I was saying were just like so normal to me, but they were so shocking. Like I remember people's faces at Columbia when I was telling them like, oh yeah, no, like I had a stapler thrown on my head once, or like, oh yeah, I had to like drive to an artist like house to like drop off like tour books because they didn't want to use it. They didn't believe in like fax machines or printers or any of these things. All this like crazy stuff, and that's like just scratching the surface. Like over drinks, like tell a lot better stories, but it was crazy because it's like it's everything that you want. You're willing to sacrifice, and like you're willing to sacrifice like financial returns and like all these things to like be a part of the industry and to like be a part of the culture. But there's no real reason that you shouldn't be compensated for those things. But for some reason, like everyone always says that, and then it creates this weird situation where it's like your potential is higher than where it is. You know that you're being underpaid. But you know that there's 20 people that can perform the job, not as well as you, but like, within striking distance, that because the job's not that hard or intensive, that you are forced to like stay in this cycle of like being underappreciated, but also like knowing that you might deserve that level of underappreciation. So it's a very weird industry to be in a lot of ways. And like, you also know that people are making money behind you. Like you know what your artists are making and all these other things. So it's really interesting. Like I really loved it. I thought being a creator in the space was incredible. It was also very difficult, very taxing. But I also thought it was just, you sit at such a cool part of culture that like, I do think that deserves some type of premium. I hope that like a lot of the things that are coming about now with Web3 and like the enablement of creators and like the decentralized like access to finances and all these other things, right? I think it's going to get better. I think a lot of the problems are going to be solved, or at least like fixed a little bit. But yeah, I mean, being in the industry is crazy, man. You literally never know what to expect. Every day is different, and every person you deal with is like massively different. Like the power of celebrity is like crazy, as well as like people that don't leverage it in a certain way. And you realize that these people are just humans. You realize that like your bosses are just people that have more time than you, that live in an era that doesn't that no longer exists. Like you realize that creators are special people in a lot of different ways, but at the same time, they're also just human. Like you learn a lot, and I also think that I've learned how to talk like so much more from that, right? Like when I was younger, I was mostly just like a musician that didn't want to like talk on the phone or ever like go up to the hostess at restaurants and things like that. And now like being at the agency, all you do is talk. It's like literally the job. So it taught me a lot. But it also taught me how to appreciate myself and my value and go capture value, because I saw how much value we were creating,
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I have a good friend who worked at Warner, and then went to a private label. And now he's trying to create his own label, and he has a music startup as well. And I heard, a lot of the similar things that you get underpaid. It's extremely competitive. You're dealing, and I heard this recently, another side of it, dealing with, and I actually don't know how true this is. I feel like it's pseudoscience a little bit, but I have heard from so many different people that creative people, and I consider being an entrepreneur, like me, creative. Totally. I mean, you're a musician and you're an entrepreneur that's a creator. but that you have just a different side of your brain. And so I've heard a lot of like interacting with these like artists, like they're awesome people and all that, and they're not mean, but they just don't understand like deadlines or project management or anything like business. They have no business savviness, which is like insane. That's why they usually need a manager, right? And they don't want to like think about numbers or anything like that. I've heard that part, and I'm seeing that right now a little bit with some stuff I'm working on is insane.
They're a tough breed to
I feel like it is like it could be a scientific thing. Honestly, like I think like just not.
Yeah, it should be studied more. I've never really thought about it like that. You put it really well.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard some like from comedians to creators, influencers, artists, all the same stuff. ADHD, creative process. Never. Yeah. But I feel like if you have that balance, I feel like you do. That's really strong. But yeah, I feel like music, kind of like real estate. Maybe it's not the right analogy, but I feel like they're both pretty competitive. But people usually don't go into it's not the first choice out of college. Like I've always thought like real estate's a ton of money in real estate, but people normally go finance, software engineering, music, ton of money in music, a lot of influence, but it's not someone's first choice. It kind of like it's not like pushed as much, I feel like. But it's very entrepreneurial in that like it's almost like a deal. It's very much like a deal making world. Like there's some people who do really well. I want to hear more about this from like if you have any stories or thoughts on this. But I feel like it's super competitive, and it's so competitive that it pushes people to be really good at negotiation, networking, strategy. Like that, it's like another level of thinking where they can find an artist or find a brand, create something together, create like a label, spin off. Like I feel like the people who kill it just like are just have really good street skills. I don't know what it is. And it's so prevalent in like music.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. You're making a lot of great points. It's funny because when you get hired, like it felt like college 2.0 because I got hired with like 50 other people. The story is actually pretty funny. So when I graduated from school, I moved to Thailand for like 3 months. I was told I had a job at a label, and nice. When I decided to come back, they were like that job offer expired. Like we never heard from you. Which who's to say it was my fault or their fault? I think it's their fault, but whatever. And then I had to go get a job at Panda Express as a manager, which I worked for one day. And that day I got a call from WME who I had applied to like 2 months before, being like, "Hey, we want to bring you in." Yeah. But they bring you in with I saw the photo of me in the Panda Express uniform, my first job out of college. It's ridiculous.
That's great. That's
yeah,
a great story.
But anyway, so they start with 50 people, and then you literally are all in the mailroom, and like you are literally sorting mail, you are literally doing these things. I was in Music Central because the music mailroom is a little different, but we're literally in the basement.
Is that outdated? Because I feel like similar to law, similar to like the finance, like these stories in the 80s, like intern, it was his uncle's business, he's in the mailroom, he's delivering records.
And I haven't sent a letter. I don't even know where the post office is half the time. Like I never do any of that. Like it's all electronic. But the thing is, like, people do send packages. It is like kind of an old school industry. So like there were full carts of mail every day. In the music side, we do ticket counts. So you had to get like ticket counts for music, for concerts, which again is like hilarious because you'd have to like get them via email. You have to ask for them every day. They would send them to you, just a number, and then you put it in an Excel sheet, and then you'd eventually send that off to the artist. Instead of just having some system, right? Like there's so many different ways. The funny thing is that we created a system and the artists never used it. So it's like it's not even like a tech capability problem. It's just like a laziness use problem, whatever. But they put you in the mailroom with like I was in there with 16 people. People in the film and talent business are there with 50 people. We're all in the basement together. And they basically say, as soon as there's an opening upstairs, one of you guys could get out of here. And then, so for every job, you have like a bunch of little minnows all swimming for the exits together. So that culture of like hustle and deal making and all these things,
it's a lot of hustle.
You have to separate yourself very early. You have to sell yourself very, very early, or you'll just die down there because you're making minimum wage. You're not doing anything. You feel your soul is being crushed.
And do you think like that's like a just a related topic around like there's always like the quintessential dilemma of like in startups being like techie or fuzzy. I went to Stanford, a big thing. I'm more of a business guy, and I'll handle the business side. It's like a meme. Like engineers are like, fuck that. Like I'm building. Like, what value are you gonna add? But I do feel like in the business world there is a lot of value to add, but it's like it's fuzzy. But there's some like concrete aspects. So like obviously like growth hacking and marketing is becoming way more of a objective skill, and you can talk about that later. But do you think though, like given the fact that your class, people in music, you can obviously have artistic sense and like an ear that's still kind of subjective or like right? So then you kind of have to be getting really good at what I was saying earlier, like the hustle, which what is that objectively? It's sales, EQ, I guess, and negotiation. I mean, I don't know. Like, what do you think differentiates people in that industry? Like network. I mean, like what are like the how do some people make?
There's a couple ways. Don't? One of them is just being out creating everyone. So like out creativing everyone, so to speak. It's like being the ears, right? Like the person that just like knows what's going to be hot, that like is really boots to the ground. Person who's going to shows, which is also like a combination of sales and just time spent doing something else, right? It's like just all listening.
Sure.
That's really important. There's another group of people that's like, can you connect the dots and can you be the person that's actually connected in the company? So you're like, oh, I have an idea. This artist should do this commercial while they're doing this other thing. So I'm linking multiple different departments together, creating value that way. The third is like being a son or daughter of, which that's like my favorite phrase, like my favorite like coin term ever. Like the son ofs were the fastest tracks always. I remember Patrick Whitesoul's kid and Ari Skip were like both also like interns. It was just a funny thing. But yeah, I mean, those are probably the three major buckets. Like hustle is really everything, and like being consistent. It's kind of weird because they always say like, for instance, it was like don't be the best at making coffee, because if you're the best at making coffee, they're just going to make you make coffee. So be shitty at all the assistant things, but be very good at all of the talent and development things. Like my boss was the head of the music department, and he once told me he's like you kind of suck at being assistant. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna be fired. And he was like, but you're really good at everything else. I go, yeah, because I want to do everything else. And I was like, and I'm wasted down here, doing scheduling and grabbing coffee for Iggy Azalea. Like that doesn't make value, right? That's how I eventually got promoted was that conversation. But it's a combination of things, man. And like hustling has been always like my biggest like unlock and my biggest like skill set. Like I was selling lunches in middle school. I was making and selling lunches. Like I've always had that like hustler entrepreneurial sense. Yeah.
No, I mean same, and I love that, but it's tough, man. I mean, it's like it's like a superpower, but it's like a tough, it's like it's who you are and everything.
But, do you find that your follow through? Do you find a lot of follow through when you feel like you have like a lot of entrepreneur? Because I feel like you're such a hustler too. Like I identified that in you, and I think that's like a common thread between you and I. But like I feel like the follow through is like the curse, right? Because I feel like there's so many things that I get really excited about that like I push to a point where it's like, oh wow, this is like pretty meaningful progress, and then it's like. Fuck! Like I kind of don't want to do it anymore. I kind of want to do another thing that I can have that exact same kind of.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure, and that could be the creative element or the aspect of like the personality of being like a little ADHD jumper. Yeah, I mean, I love the excitement of it. I love learning new things. I love meeting new people and different. I feel like it's like a good analogy. It's like I love just like the business and like just like the nexus between different. So I don't really have any industries necessarily. I'm like, this is the only thing I'm going to do. I like consumer, I guess, but I'm also open to enterprise. But what I love the most is just like, we're going to get into, I don't know, restaurants, right? And build a tool for restaurants. Then just learning the restaurant world, meeting different restaurant people. It's like you're almost like entering a different, like going to a new planet and like learning all these. I love that. Like these weird characters and like all these different things you learn about. And like, I didn't realize that this is what happens. Right. But yes, but the part though, that's tough. But I think it is good. Is realizing at what point, like, do you want to keep continuing? And then also, I think being a hustler, you're really good at sales, and you can sell yourself on something. You can sell other people on something really easily. You sell yourself too easily because you're like so excited about it. Like, maybe actually that wasn't the right idea. But I think it's better to go from being open to a lot of things to be able to like, learning how to wind that down versus the opposite of like never wanting to do anything and then having to like, loosen that muscle. So I feel like anyway, we're all different, but I feel like that.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I like that a lot. And I think I'm the same way. I think a lot of people have that difficulty. Because at first, like, it's really easy to see massive delta, right? Like in the beginning, when you're learning something for the first time, you're like, even like the most basic stuff that like, again, anyone in the industry would know for a long time. You're just like, wow, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I'm kind of the same as everyone else. And
or you're like, oh, wow. Now I realize why this thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's because of,
right. That's what I was saying.
But at the same, But at the same time, you're like, I'm not going to spend 30 years in one industry and like just kind of coast. And then, it's faster, right?
Times than like go stick with one thing forever. It's
exactly. And there's, they say creativity is like, is cross-pollination. So like it's analogies between different industries. There's so many common underpinnings of things. So, over time you get better, you learn more. I definitely want to transition to Web3 and talk more about that. I guess the last thing that I've heard about is I feel like in a couple questions. So WME, old talent industry, do you think, and like labels and all that, do you think they're going to get disrupted soon? And maybe that's the Web3 is the answer for that. And then secondly, I've heard that, across comedy, entertainment, music, I guess any live shows, I've heard there's different areas of different revenue streams. And obviously we know Spotify and all the things have changed, but what are your thoughts on like the different revenue streams changing within the talent world? Because I know like there's touring, streaming, and then I guess we're getting more into like this creator economy stuff. But like, how do you think that's going to change? So I guess like, old school talent and then the revenue stream.
Yeah, this is a great point too. And this kind of is a nice transition to Web3 anyway, because I think, there's so much value in being decentralized in terms of access, right? Like the 360 deals with the labels of old, like very damaging to artists, very like centralized control. We've moved a lot away from that. We have opened up the amount of revenue streams, which does increase the pressure on platforms to like open up revenue to artists and kind of get them to spend more of their time on that revenue stream, which I think is really good, right? Like we are moving towards a largely decentralized system of revenues, but it's a centralized system of like benefactors rather, which is really interesting. The thing is, it's like, I think this is like the biggest struggle, right? Like of my existence right now, or my career rather. My existence is a much deeper struggle, but of the career is like, it's the point of, do people actually care about decentralization, right? Do consumers actually care about decentralization? The artists themselves would all love to have many hubs of people that all separate or all like coagulate around them. But the reality is it's just easier, right? Like even in a decentralized system, won't aggregators still be really like beneficial? 100%.
It'll always aggregate. It'll always
unbundle into this system like that, right?
Yeah.
So I always think like, do people really care about the underlying infrastructure of a system, or do they only care about the content that's being generated to them? If a label could strike the perfect chords, if a massive company could strike the perfect chords for every human being, like they wouldn't give a shit, right? They would pay that service for that person. Do people care about like decentralized land access for the metaverse, or do they actually just care about what the best experience is, right? Like all of these things are really interesting, and like, can you disrupt a group of people or a system of culture that has driven culture for the past, forever? I think it's really hard. I think it's not a matter of like who can have a better ticketing service, who can have all these things. I think it's more like, how do you disrupt like people's underlying content and culture? And like a bunch of independents can do it, right? Like the guys that created Among Us took the gaming world by storm. It was like a team of like, I think like 6 people, something like that. Axie, like all these different things. I think you can some things, but at the end of the day, like those guys just get bought by someone that's big, right? And I think our like decision to go decentralized is great. It takes a long time, and so this is something that I think about a lot with culture and content and all those things. I think it's a lot harder than with like, because there's switching costs. There's like massive switching costs when there's in like DeFi and these and other angles, other layers of it. There aren't really as many. It's like, oh, I can do this one thing that's pretty much the same thing I'm doing now, but it's like tremendously better. I'll go do that thing. But with content and culture, it's like, who's to say that it's better? Independent artists have done really well, but their distribution is always being done through labels, right? Like Macklemore always sold himself as like a artist that was like not on a label. Same with Chance the Rapper, and like they're both on labels. Like they're both getting distributed through the same guys. Like they're just not on a 360 deal because no one does that anymore. Everyone is like an independent artist now, but they're all, So yeah, we've democratized access to content, but we've also made it that much harder by the fact that like everyone now thinks that they're a creator. Everyone, like every Uber driver in LA is like trying to act,
Yeah, and I've heard this from Daniel Ek, right, of Spotify. He made a really good point, kind of related to this, that artists were complaining about not making enough money on Spotify, and he I'm pretty sure this is him. He just said like straight up, it's gotten easier to make music. The tools are there. It's democratized. Everyone has access to the internet for streaming and discovery through SoundCloud and whatever, YouTube and social media. It's getting more competitive. So he's like, times have changed. You can't sit around like the 80s and do an album every 3 years and expect to make a lot of money. Sorry, it's competitive. If you want to make more money, go produce more content. Exactly. And that's literally what he said. So it's like
it's exactly right? Like the amount of tools, like deadmau5 himself has like done like tutorials on how to like stem for stem make his songs. Like there's so many artists that like release their stuff. Yeah, I think that's the funny thing is that one of the biggest lessons I learned was there's an artist who had like a big following, hit all that, like checked all the boxes. She was in a signing meeting and she sounded great. And I remember very vividly, we passed on her and someone in the room was just like, how can we pass on this person? She sounds incredible. And someone, I can't remember who it was, but one of the big partners just says like, if all it took was sounding good, we'd have 1 million artists. They go, do you know how many people sound like? There's 1 million people that look like this. They're their mom is sick, and there's this. They go, you have to pick one eventually. And there's like, we have 1 million of them, and it's just the reality is that there's a ton of talented people. They'll probably all have micro fan, type things. They'll probably increase monetization for themselves to where they can make a living out of it. But yeah, the star chasing is really hard, and it is king made, right? Like that's the unfortunate reality of things. There's possibility to break through, but those stories are few and far between. A lot of it is manufactured. And even those stories are like a little crafty. They're a little crafted by
everything, not to be cynical, I feel like just having done startups and worked in marketing and consumer, like so many things to make set up.
Web3 is a great, and the NFT space is a great example of that as well. I remember one day my one of my partners was just so disillusioned because he's like, everyone in the space is either a scumbag or they're just fake. And I was like, that's not, it's not wholly true, but that's like, welcome to the world, bud. Like that's kind of bizarre.
Yeah. I'm like, I've entrepreneurial friends who are kind of like fake it till you make it while they're building, but like perception. And I've and it kind of works out. And then also I've heard this in the music world. A lot of these rappers and artists like are not making that much money at all. It's all about perception and brand, that they show off what they have, and like it works for some of them. But yeah, I mean it also kind of leads to like I want to hear Minotaur and NFT. I want you to talk. I know a decent amount about or a little bit about NFTs, but I definitely want you to like educate and like I want to kind of like explore what you've learned about the space. But I feel like building tools is way better, shovels, whatever, than trying to be the individual product or brand chasing like stardom, with that. But,
so yeah, it's interesting. Also, just to your last point, just real quick, there's a great story about a DJ who was spending more money on fireworks than he was making for the show. I won't say who it is, but like he was literally, all his money was coming from streaming, massive streaming artist, but would spend more on just pyrotechnics than his like guarantee was on the show, which I thought was really funny. Wow. It is like, that's the thing, is like, it's all a marketing machine for whatever revenue stream is. So it's a great transition to NFTs and kind of where I see the power for celebrities. Like tokenized, it could be NFTs, it could be a token, it could be any type of like mechanism or delivery that you want. But like the power of NFTs for artists and celebrities and like these types of creators is in the larger distributions. The NFT space started with like, look how like cool 101s are because they're immutable. You're the only one that owns them, etc. But then people also realize that like those types of immutable objects can be like infinitely replicable. So that like increasing distribution was actually the real power of like unlocking utility. It's really hard to give utility to a 1 of 1, but it's really easy to give broad, widespread utility to 10,000 units. And like, there's that adage about like, don't find your like million fans, find your 1,000 fans that are going to pay you, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And like, there's no better mechanism in my mind for price discovery of your fanhood, or your fandom, than NFTs, right? Like, you're able to find and create like a membership system that gives you direct access to your fans.
And do you think it's also linked to, I mean, it's interesting, price discovery, also related to auction dynamics? I mean, like the fact that there's no set price, if there's a market for it, right? Creating a mini market for you or whatever you're selling, you can understand where I mean, it's kind of like going back to the auction model. I always say like cycles, once again, eBay, auction, then Amazon.
Keep rewriting the same shit, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like, even DAOs, right? I feel like I've said this earlier, like DAOs are kind of NFTs or just kind of Kickstarter.
Yeah, it depends on what it's for, but yeah, 100%. You can DAOify like an actual full-on business, and then it becomes a lot different. Or like ENS.
It's way more involved, but at the end of the day, it's like, here's a set of our goals for
what we want to pay money, and then here it is. Yeah, it's funny. People will be like, we should do we could tokenize this like club membership. And it's like, yeah, but that exists. Like those types of things, like just pay a monthly or yearly fee. Like, it's not reinventing the wheel as much as some people on both sides of the fence want to pretend that it is, right? It is an improvement on a lot of mechanisms, though. And that's the thing, is it's like, for artists, you then have these people who are holding a token with which you can use to gate them for access onto things, or you can deliver them additional things, right? So there's this really cool opportunity to directly deliver a bunch of different things to someone. You also have all this data in terms of like what's in their wallet, what else they own, et cetera, et cetera. But the coolest thing is that like now more than ever before, you can control and incentivize behavior with your behavior or interaction and engagement with your brand. Whether that's like, hey, like engage to earn type dynamics, where it's like, if you listen to my most recent like single, you'll get this benefit that directly, improves your standing in this community. Or it's like, buy my merch, like any of these different types of things. Like, so artists have a bunch of different ways that are their like highest margin performers, like Childish Gambino, for example, like does films, does music, does all different types of things, right? He decides what is his highest margin thing, and everything else that he does services that highest margin item. It drives more attraction and engagement there. NFTs open up a ton of access to like these earn dynamics, where you can get, not only do you get people amplifying whatever you're doing because they're incentivized to maximize their upside, but you're also getting this really cool mechanism with which you can create like a mini ecosystem and mini economy around you. And like, the reality is that like only certain people can do this, right? Like, the TAM of NFTs is so crazy depending on what the product is, that like it's really interesting. Like, their high-end NFT and things like that have to have a different mechanism than low-end NFTs and things like that. Like,
is it very, and I love the fact, and kind of seeing this evolution or renaissance of like bootstrapping companies and finding product market fit, and then raising and then going in on it, from friends, as someone who kind of trying to do that. But you said you started out Minotaur as an agency, and you're trying to, and that's actually also another thing too, is like being very customized with every individual project, and then eventually scaling it out and making a template. But they always say, and I remember like, it's like cliche, but like, do things that don't scale and then eventually figure it out. Do you think though that, there'll probably be templates in the future, but for now, like with what you guys do and what you think, is applicable, every NFT project will be super custom depending on who it's for?
It depends, right? Like, if you're just trying to do a club member, like the rails with which like musicians, for example, can engage are like fairly simple. So if you build the rails for that, like you could deliver that to everyone. The thing is, it's like no artist wants to do that though. Like, to your point around the brain thing, like the business person wants to make everything infinitely scalable. They want to make everything like copycat because it makes things more efficient and easier on them. The creative wants to make everything like insanely unique, special. They want it to be a moment in time. They want it to be remembered. So you have this, like, you do have these budding up of things. And like, when we first talked to investors before we'd ever launched a project, we got that comment a lot of like, how does this scale? And my answer was always, well, first of all, it doesn't necessarily matter in the beginning, because the amount of money that we fly off on these projects, it's a 99.9% margin. We're flying off, millions of dollars per project. Like, that doesn't matter. Even if we only ever did 4 projects a month, 5 projects a month, we could be valued at, above $100 million, like very easy with a basic multiple. So that part of it never really mattered. The thing that's really interesting though is that like big top tier creators don't want to do that. So you have to consider who you're serving and who your audience is. So for us, like there's no reason not to have an agency given like our connectivity to talent and our ability to execute unique visions, which again, like I've made my whole career doing. But there's also like we can't service everyone, right? Like I also want to amplify the artist who has, 1,000 followers, who knows they could sell 100 NFTs, who would actually help them get on the road if they did that. And they actually don't want to sell NFTs as a career. They want to sell their creativity and their art, and they want to be an artist. So like being able to service that person well at the top end, being able to understand and cater to those people is really important. And the economics like of the projects makes it to where like we could scale infinite. Like if it only takes me adding 3 bodies to do another project that nets that much money, I own a bunch of little businesses then that go.
Yeah. I mean, very agency oriented, and it's cool though. I mean, like, and so are you guys right now? And I know you did Castle Kid, and love for you to explain that project to everyone and hear how things are going. But so are you guys going for high end as well as like bottoms up, like the mass of artists, or just the high? Like how are you guys like?
Started as an agency. We are doing high value projects on the agency side, fully custom. We're kind of eating our own dog food now because we are building like a self-serve platform. Yeah. So we are like customize it. Like we have the Rails for it, and then we customize on the back end. Our goal is to be able to give any capable developer, whether they're Web 2 or Web 3, the tool set with which they can launch their own projects. And then like that's like to launch their own custom projects. And then like the most basic of creators who don't have a team, don't have anyone around them, to be able to launch their own projects and generate their own art on our platform and do all of these other things. So there's a lot of sets of this. I personally, and like, I would love to look back on this and see whether I was right or not, but like, I personally think we can do both. I personally think that there is more than enough opportunity to tackle more than one thing here. I think that's kind of the beauty of like Web3 companies. Yeah. I've always struggled with like do one small piece of this really, really well, because the reality is like there's not that many people that could do the other pieces that well either right now. So we should capture as much of the value stack. Yeah, exactly. We want to capture as much of the value stack as possible. And like if I can make X margins on the full set of product, why wouldn't I just do that instead of bringing in partners? Like we can handle it. It's not that difficult right now. I always say like it's not that difficult to launch a project in Web3 right now. It's really difficult to launch a successful project. And to do one that actually carries utility, that actually is like pushing the space forward and not just a pie in the sky, you're really good at marketing, something that's like the 360 of value is really hard. It's really hard. And very few will do it. Yeah. And I don't know what's going to happen with our projects either, but I know that at their core, they are building something. And at the end of the day, we are building Rails and enablement technology for creatives. And that's like been the ethos of my whole life.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's awesome. And once again, build the tools, like learn while doing it, dog food while you're doing it, and then like realize, oh, wow, we can just like automate that. Everyone needs this, and just let everyone come in after. And so I guess, Castle Kid, love for you to explain that a little bit. And that's like your first project that you guys are doing right now? It was
our first end-to-end, because we did Creature World before that. Okay. Which did 130 million in revenue on secondary.
Oh, wow.
We've done I worked with the Bungie team to do their project as well. I've worked and advised on a bunch of things, but it was the first end to end, like where we literally like met with someone and they didn't even have art or a concept really, and like from the very beginning, like built the entire project from scratch, which was super cool. And like I recommend to anyone like looking to build in anything to try to do something end to end, because you learn so much. Like the amount that I know now would have benefited all of the other advising and all the other things that I did so much. Even the fact that I was packaging, like I was doing generative art for a long time, and like I love like creative coding and those things. And I used to send this like document to people about how to like prepare the art so I could do the generative process. And then once I actually went, and like they were all like were struggling with it, and once I actually went through and like did the process for them, I was like, oh, this is so messed up. Like I need to change so many things. But Castle Kid itself was the first end-to-end project. It was a project with Grammy-nominated director Colin Tilley, who did every music video on Justin Bieber's last album. He's been nominated for multiple Grammys. Peaches, the music video of Justin Bieber, is the most recent one. He wanted to do a project he wanted to do a full-length feature film as part of a project where like the film involved a DAO that was using its using its customer base as like or its community as like the generative process for a lot of the ideas and the concepts of the film. It was awesome. I mean, we built that up. It was about 3 weeks full end to end in terms of timeline. That's like at a breakneck pace. In 10 days, we announced and went on sale. We did 25,000 real people in the server. We banned 39,000 bots. So like in a normal server, that would have been 60,000 people in the server. We sold out in 18 minutes, made $4 million. That money has gone into like tech development, film, etc. We launched a DAO. We just started like that process. We launched like token gated website with merch and all these other things. Like our capabilities are pretty strong. And now those capabilities get to get filtered into every other project that we ever do. Right. So like now from day one, when we launch another project, we'll have it DAO compatible. We'll have all the rails on the website for content delivery and all these things. And
you're learning as you go, and then also just like creating the Lego pieces that you know about. That's super cool. And so the end goal. Yeah, what's the end vision for Minotaur?
The end vision is for the agency to be doing the coolest and biggest projects that we can, and for the scalable solution to give young creators the opportunity to interact with the blockchain and a decentralized system without giving up all of their access, and being able to do it that's in a way that like synergizes with the rest of what they're doing. We always say like for artists, like we don't want you to have to do any work. Like I don't want you to have to like spend time like a Patreon type thing. Like I don't want you to have to like go create stuff just for this. I want what you do to be amplified by NFTs, and like that's really the way, juicing all of the things that you're doing and like being able to ring the towel a little bit more on everything. And it's not in an exploitative way whatsoever. It's more like enhance what you're doing, bring people closer to you because people are willing to pay for content unlike ever before. So just capturing that willingness to pay and like sitting in a spot where like you can trade access for a willingness to pay is exactly what we're doing. And, at its core, what we're finding. And that's where I want us to take it.
Super cool. I know we're kind of getting to the end of this. I was going to say last question. And, once it's been super, super interesting, and I'm excited to follow along with, what you guys are doing. And I see the vision. I guess, what are your thoughts on like the NFT market right now and just overall crypto?
Yeah, so the NFT market, it's a little weird, man. Like since we launched Castle, like I've done so many projects and seen a bunch of projects like do really well. Recently it's getting to the point where everyone that's been wanting to build like really cool things are like about to come out. And like, there's a lot of people who are building nonsense things that are filling the space that like hurt everything. So it's an interesting time right now. The whole reason I wanted to jump into this too and like do projects on the custom side is to show that like there's a bar that needs to be hit for projects. There's too many cash grabs. There's too much nonsense. The culture is a little poison right now. So the goal right now is to like build high quality projects that demonstrate that like you don't have to just go buy every derivative that you see. Like make people create, like make them actually do something new. So the state of this, I'd say it's good. I mean, it's massive. It's growing every single day. But I will say that like we do need a cultural shift and like a shift in expectation that will then incentivize real builders as opposed to just nonsense cash grabs. Because right now it's so easy. You get all this money up front. You can promise the same thing that every other person promised, and like you're protected from any like bad acting because you're anonymous or no one really has follow through. So there's a lot of problems, but again, these are all things that we're looking to solve with what we're doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the exciting thing about Web3 is like it's
right.
not perfect. It's just there's so many areas that are like this interaction sucks.
Totally.
This process is full of bots. I mean, like building a bot or building some sort of bot detection or fraud for Discord servers. You can build that. There's so many issues, but that's also opportunity, right?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. It's anyone can improve the system, right? Like that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, Sterling, great having you on here. Really interesting hearing about what you guys have been working on. Definitely enjoy SF.
Thanks.
We'll definitely, be in touch. But yeah, thanks again for being on here. Yeah, perfect, man.